Welcome back for another deep dive.
Always excited to be back.
This time, we're going to be looking at the world of attraction.
The science behind it.
We'll be exploring the science of attraction.
A book that combines evolutionary psychology, social dynamics, practical dating advice.
And we're going to try to understand, what really makes us tick.
It's a fascinating area.
It is, yeah. So are you ready to decode some of those subtle signals and become irresistible?
Let's do it.
All right, let's dive in. So one of the things that really intrigued me right off the bat was this idea of Waisman's 4 steps of attraction.
Oh, yeah. That's a really interesting concept.
That we don't actually evaluate potential partners in a straightforward, logical way.
It's much more nuanced than that.
So tell me more about that.
Well, it's like a subconscious filter.
Okay.
It starts with physical attraction, that initial spark,
Right.
but then it moves to status, how eligible we perceive someone to be.
Oh, interesting.
And then after that comes emotional connection.
So do we actually enjoy spending time with this person?
Exactly. And then the final step, and this is maybe the most surprising, is logic.
Logic is the last thing we consider.
Yeah. It really seems counterintuitive, doesn't it?
It really does.
So basically, we often make decisions based on feelings first, and then try to rationalize them later.
Oh, that makes so much sense when you think about it.
Right. We've all been there.
I know, I have.
Attracted to someone, even though logically it might not have been the best choice.
Yeah, for sure. So speaking of subconscious reactions, the book delves into how our bodies actually communicate before we even say a word.
Oh, body language is huge.
I know, I could be a little oblivious to it sometimes.
Well, we all are to some
Yeah.
extent. It's largely unconscious, you
Yeah.
know,
Right.
but we're constantly sending and receiving these nonverbal cues.
And what are some of the key things that we're communicating through body language when it comes to attraction?
Well, it often boils down to 2 main elements, availability and fertility.
Availability, I get like smiling, open posture, eye contact.
Yeah, you're signaling that you're approachable, open to interaction.
But fertility,
That's where it gets a little more primal.
okay, walk me through this.
So it's all about those subconscious signals of health and suitability as a mate.
Hmm.
And these signals, they can differ for men and women.
Oh, interesting.
Like, for example, the book talks about how men will instinctively puff up their chests,
Really?
try to appear larger when a beautiful woman enters the room.
Like peacocks displaying their feathers.
Exactly. It's this unconscious attempt to demonstrate strength and virility.
Wow, that's pretty fascinating.
And women, they might subtly emphasize their curves when walking past attractive men.
Oh, so it's like these little subconscious things that we do.
Exactly. And they're sending a very clear message, even if we're not aware of it.
It really makes you wonder how much control we actually have over our behavior.
That's the big question, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
So the book also talks about the power of eye contact.
Oh, eye contact is huge.
And it even puts a number on it.
Right. The 3-second rule of trust.
So tell me about that.
So we make all sorts of assumptions about a person based on their gaze, right?
Yeah. Like if they're trustworthy or not.
Exactly. Too much eye contact can be creepy, unsettling, but the right amount can really build trust and connection.
So what's the sweet spot?
Seems to be around 3 seconds.
Okay, so not staring someone down.
No, not at all. It's about finding that balance.
So how do you suggest people use eye contact effectively?
Well, the book recommends aiming for eye contact about 50% of the time while you're speaking
Okay.
and about 75% of the time when you're listening.
Oh, that's interesting.
It's a subtle way to show you're engaged and interested without overwhelming the other person.
I like that.
Yeah.
And speaking of subtle signals, the book didn't shy away from talking about touch.
The art of touch.
Yeah, and it even categorized different types of touch based on how they function in flirting.
Oh, yeah. That's a really helpful framework.
I thought so too. So tell me more about these different categories,
Well, you've got friendly touch.
like a pat on the back.
Exactly. Or a quick hug. Something casual, non-threatening.
Right.
Then you've got plausible deniability touch.
What's that?
So this is a little bit more intimate. Okay. Maybe a lingering touch on the arm or a gentle brush of the hand. It creates that sense of mystery and possibility.
Oh, I see.
And then, of course, you've got nuclear touch.
Nuclear touch. That sounds intense.
It is. This leaves no doubt about your intentions.
Give me an example.
Imagine lightly tracing your fingers along someone's arm while holding their gaze.
Wow, okay. That's definitely a clear signal.
It is. It's a bold move.
So is the book recommending that we all start using nuclear touch?
Well, not necessarily. It actually suggests that combining plausible deniability touches with nuclear touches can be the most effective strategy.
Okay, so it's about creating a sense of intrigue and anticipation.
Exactly. It's all about the chase.
The chase.
Yeah, remember we talked about intermittent rewards? We're
Oh.
wired to be more driven by unpredictable rewards than consistent ones.
So like a slot machine.
Exactly. It's the anticipation of that potential win that keeps us hooked.
And how does that relate to attraction?
While a little uncertainty, a little playing hard to get can actually increase your desirability.
So don't shower someone with attention constantly.
Not necessarily. The book even cites a study where women were more attracted to men whose feelings were uncertain.
Oh, wow. So a little mystery goes a long way.
It seems that way.
But there's a fine line between playing hard to get and just being manipulative, right?
Right, absolutely. You don't want to create unnecessary drama or play games with people's feelings.
Right. And speaking of playing games, I was really surprised by the book's take on the whole opposites attract thing.
That's a common misconception.
It is.
A lot of research actually suggests that long-term couples tend to be more similar than different.
Really?
Yeah.
So they share similar values, interests, personalities?
Exactly.
So all those whirlwind romances where you have two completely different people falling head over heels, that's more fiction than reality.
Well, those stories make for great entertainment.
They do.
But in reality, shared values and interests, they lay a much stronger foundation for a lasting relationship.
Because it leads to fewer conflicts.
Exactly. And a greater sense of understanding.
So it's not just about that initial spark.
No, it's about finding someone who's really on the same wavelength as you.
Someone you can build a life with.
Exactly. And this actually leads to another fascinating point the book makes.
What's that?
This idea that we might not actually know what we truly want.
I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
We'll dive into that after a quick break.
Sounds good.
We often create this idealized image in our minds of like the perfect partner.
Yeah.
But then in reality, we're often surprised by who we actually end up being drawn to.
I've definitely experienced that.
It's like we have this checklist of traits that we're looking for, but then real life attraction throws us a curveball.
It does. So is the book saying we should ditch the checklist?
Well, it encourages us to be open to unexpected connections because you never know. You might find yourself attracted to someone who totally breaks the mold of what you thought you wanted.
Yeah. And the book actually talks about why this happens. It mentions something called construal level theory.
Yeah, it's this idea that we tend to think more abstractly about things that are distant.
Like potential partners.
Exactly. So we might develop this idealized vision of who we think we want
But it doesn't always match up.
to who we actually click with in person.
Interesting. So maybe it's better to just kind of go with the flow and see who you vibe with.
Yeah, be open to surprises.
Yeah, I like that. So I also found it fascinating how the book challenges some of the common myths about what women find attractive in men.
Oh, like what?
Well, like the idea that women are just drawn to men who are constantly happy and smiling.
Right.
While happiness is generally a good thing.
Yeah.
Research suggests that women might actually find men who express a mix of pride and even shame more appealing.
At least initially.
Shame.
Yeah, it seems counterintuitive.
It does.
But it makes sense from an evolutionary psychology perspective.
How so?
So pride signals status and capability,
Okay.
which are attractive qualities in a potential mate.
Makes sense.
And while shame might seem negative on the surface,
Yeah.
a certain degree of shame can actually be a good thing.
Okay, now you're really going to have to explain this one to me.
Think of it as a sign of self-awareness
Okay.
and sensitivity to social norms.
So like a man who's maybe a little bit humble.
Exactly.
Not too arrogant.
Right. He might be perceived as more empathetic and considerate.
Which are good qualities in a long-term partner.
Absolutely.
So it's not about being a pushover or anything.
No, not at all. It's about showing a certain level of depth and sensitivity.
That's interesting. So we've talked about how attraction is this complex interplay of biology and psychology.
Yeah.
But it sounds like cultural norms play a role too.
They do.
The book actually uses the example of happiness to illustrate this point.
Right. We touched on how different cultures might view happiness in men versus women.
Yeah, you mentioned that men are generally more attracted to happy, smiling women.
Yeah.
But women might not find men who express a lot of happiness as attractive.
It's a curious finding, isn't it?
It is.
And the book suggests that it might be because happiness in men is sometimes interpreted as a lack of dominance or ambition.
At least initially.
Right.
So a guy who's always grinning ear to ear might not be seen as like a go-getter.
Exactly.
It's fascinating how these cultural perceptions can shape what we find attractive.
They really do. And it's important to remember that these norms are constantly evolving.
Yeah? What might be considered hot in one culture?
Could be totally different in another.
Exactly. So this deep dive has really shown me how much we still don't know about attraction.
It's a complex puzzle with so many pieces.
And it's probably different for every single person.
It probably is.
So the book also dives into some pretty intriguing topics like kink.
Oh, yeah. That's always an interesting conversation.
It is, and how these different sexual preferences actually develop.
It explores a bunch of different theories.
Okay, like what?
Well, one is the adjacent brain theory.
What's that?
It suggests that certain areas of the brain associated with sexual arousal might be located near areas associated with other non-sexual interests.
Interesting. So that could explain why some people develop fetishes for things that seem totally random.
Exactly. Like why someone might be turned on by feet or leather or whatever.
It's all part of how our brains are wired.
And the book also talks about Pavlovian conditioning.
Oh, yeah. Like the classic example of someone developing a fetish for boots.
Exactly.
After seeing them paired with images of attractive people.
Right. It's all about association.
But the book makes a really important point.
What's that?
That kink is just a preference.
It's not an indication of anything abnormal or unhealthy.
It's about normalizing different desires.
Exactly.
And celebrating what turns people on, as long as it's consensual and respectful, of course.
Absolutely.
And the book even offers advice for couples who want to explore their kinks
Oh, yeah.
and spice things up in the bedroom.
Communication is key.
Definitely. You have to create a safe space
Yeah, where both partners feel comfortable.
to share their desires without judgment. Because so often, people are afraid to talk about what they really want.
And that can lead to a lot of unfulfilled desires.
And resentment.
Yeah. So the book suggests starting conversations casually.
Okay.
Maybe share a story about a kink you read about or heard from a friend.
Just to kind of test the waters.
Right.
It's about taking baby steps and creating a comfortable environment
Exactly.
for exploration.
The book even suggests visiting a sex shop together.
Oh, that's a fun idea.
Or using a website that allows couples to anonymously explore their kinks.
And see if they match on anything.
It's a playful way to dip your toes in the water.
I love that.
Yeah.
But beyond just exploring kinks, the book also delves into what makes for truly remarkable sex overall.
This is where it gets really interesting.
Yeah, because it goes beyond just the physical techniques.
Exactly. It highlights 8 key elements that research has shown to be crucial for amazing sex.
8 elements. Okay, I'm all ears.
All right, here we go. Presence, connection, intimacy, communication, authenticity, bliss, exploration, and vulnerability.
Wow, that's quite a list.
It is. It's about creating a holistic experience.
So it's not just about the physical act.
It's about the emotion, the mental, the spiritual connection as well.
So let's unpack some of these elements. What does it mean to bring presence into the bedroom?
Presence is about being fully present and engaged with your partner in the moment.
No distractions.
No distractions, no worries. You're giving them your undivided attention.
It sounds amazing.
Like a mini vacation from everyday life.
Just focused on each other.
Exactly. And then
Yeah.
you have connection.
Which is more than just physical chemistry.
Right. It's about feeling emotionally and mentally in sync with your partner.
Like you're on the same wavelength,
Exactly. And then there's intimacy.
which we've already talked about.
Right. It's about that emotional closeness and vulnerability.
Feeling safe, loved, and understood.
And of course, communication is key.
Being able to talk openly and honestly about your needs and desires.
Exactly.
So I can see how all of these elements work together to create a really amazing sexual experience. But what about authenticity? What does that mean in this context?
Authenticity is about being true to yourself and your desires.
Not trying to be someone you're not.
Exactly. It's about feeling comfortable expressing your sexuality without shame or judgment.
I love that. And then there's bliss.
Bliss.
Is that just another word for orgasm?
It's more than that. It's about that feeling of transcendence,
Okay.
of euphoria, of being completely lost in the moment.
Like a heightened state of pleasure.
Exactly. And then we have exploration.
Which is about trying new things.
Yes, it's about being open to stepping outside of your comfort zone.
And discovering what really turns you on.
And last but not least, vulnerability.
That one sounds a little scary.
It can be, but it's also incredibly powerful.
In what way?
Vulnerability is about letting your guard down,
Okay.
allowing yourself to be seen, touched, and loved in your most intimate moments.
It's about trust.
Exactly.
Trusting your partner completely.
And allowing yourself to be fully present in the experience.
I can see how that would lead to much deeper and more meaningful sex.
It does. But it's not always easy to be that vulnerable.
It's not. But the book argues that embracing these 8 elements can lead to sex that's not only pleasurable.
But also deeply fulfilling and emotionally connecting.
Wow. So it's not about finding that one magic position or technique.
No. It's about cultivating these deeper qualities.
Creating an environment of trust and intimacy.
Exactly. Where both partners feel safe, loved, and free to be themselves.
This has totally changed how I think about sex.
I'm glad to hear that.
It's not just about the physical act, but about all these other elements.
It's about connection.
It is. And the book actually leaves us with a thought-provoking question
Oh, yeah?
about the role of cultural expectations in shaping our perceptions of attraction.
That's a big one.
It is, and I think it's something that we all need to be more aware of.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a big one, and it's something we need to be more aware of.
It is. So we've talked about how attraction is this mix of like biology and psychology, but it sounds like cultural norms also have a huge impact.
Absolutely. We've kind of touched on how different cultures might see certain traits as, more or less attractive.
Right.
And the book uses happiness as an example.
Oh yeah, you mentioned earlier that men are usually more attracted to women who are happy and smiling.
Yeah.
But women don't always see men who express a ton of happiness as being that attractive.
Right. It's one of those weird findings.
It is.
And the book suggests that it might be due to how different cultures view happiness in men versus women.
Okay.
Like for men, happiness can sometimes be seen as a lack of dominance or ambition.
Especially when you're first meeting someone.
Right.
So a guy who's always super smiley and upbeat.
Might not come across as that driven or assertive.
That's really interesting.
It is.
I mean, obviously this is just one interpretation.
Of course.
And it's important to remember that cultural norms are always changing.
Absolutely.
What might be considered attractive today.
Could be totally different tomorrow.
Right. This whole deep dive has really shown me how much we still don't understand about attraction.
It's this intricate puzzle with like a million pieces.
And it's probably different for every single person.
It probably is.
So much to uncover.
There is. That's what makes it so fascinating though, right?
It does. It's a constant journey of discovery.
Within ourselves and in our relationships.
Yeah, I feel like I've learned so much just from this conversation.
Me too.
About the subtle cues, the evolutionary drives, and the cultural influences that all shape how we perceive attraction.
It's amazing, isn't it?
It is. From decoding body language to understanding the power of vulnerability and communication.
So many factors at play.
It really is. I feel like I have a whole new perspective on the game of love.
It's fantastic.
Attraction is just the beginning though, right?
It is. It's that spark that gets things going.
But Ben,
But building a lasting and fulfilling connection.
it takes work and understanding.
And a willingness to grow together.
What are your big takeaways from this deep dive?
I'd love to hear yours too.
What will you apply to your own life?
Let us know your thoughts.
Thanks for joining us on this exploration of the science of attraction.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time.
Keep those sparks flying.